So, we can't rule out the possibility that there actually are, psychopaths who are organizing, who have looked at the same ecological data that you and I have looked at, and have said that, have asked themselves, how do we maintain control, in a situation that's going to move more and more towards chaos in many respects,
But he spoke about the nature of culture as a sort of mitigation, or how it deals with narcissism, like that a culture he doesn't really make pan-indigenous statements, but what he's saying is, a culture, how it deals with that narcissistic impulse is sort of its measure of being able to properly steward, citizens or conscious beings, into right relationship with life. And that if a culture doesn't have those rites of passage, doesn't have those cultural ways, that the sort of unleashed narcissistic impulse, right, is what we see now en masse, because we've lost all those checks. It's sort of another dimension of it. And yeah, Daniel, I know, you've spent a lot of time in studying cultures and how to, or even like consciousness, of course, with all the psychedelic work. But how do you now or understand this as as the wake of essentially the loss of those deep cultural necessities?
Let's see. Well, yeah, of course, it's clearly, the narcissism and the psychopathy have gotten out of bounds in this current system. And when you were reading what I wrote about, from Darren Allen, what I quoted from him, I don't necessarily, it's like, yes, on the one hand, it's all systemic. There's this sort of, the control system, we went from initiation, in the, mystery school traditions, to indoctrination. And so there was more a hierarchical, system of control, to like priests and kings, rather, whereas in indigenous cultures, they tend to be much more flat hierarchically. And even if there's a chief, the chief, is more ruling by consensus. It's like they're not able to order people to go into battle or to do anything. A book that I wrote about in How Soon Is Now is by this anthropologist Pierre Klaus, Society Against the State, who looked at that in terms of Amazonian societies. So yeah, I think all of that is the case. But on the other hand, because we've created these hierarchical structures where psychopaths and so on are given a huge advantage because they don't care about externalities or don't have compassion. I slightly disagree. I don't disagree with Darren. It's like, I think that Darren's idea is very, very good and well stated, but you do have conspiracies of psychopaths to do different things, as we saw, for instance, with the Nazi Holocaust and so on. So, we can't rule out the possibility that there actually are, psychopaths who are organizing, who have looked at the same ecological data that you and I have looked at, and have said that, have asked themselves, how do we maintain control, in a situation that's going to move more and more towards chaos in many respects,
Has that not existed throughout civilizations, all throughout, as long as we know, for thousands and thousands of years? It's not like we're living in a privileged point in history where that's a novel phenomena.
Well, we're living in a specific point in history where things are different. For instance, we actually now have the technological tools, potentially to establish, long-term domination, physically and psychologically. Mm-hmm. As we're seeing with the algorithms of the social media that like Tristan Harris and Daniel Schmachtenberger just did a great podcast with Joe Rogan, where they really went into how this is, these are being hijacked, our psychologies are being hijacked and used against us, to literally them building, killer drones and, robot, policemen and military who, as a human being, you're not going to have a chance, in a conflict against the level of technocratic force that's being amassed against you. So this is literally an inflection point in human history, because this has never existed in this way before.